After 3 sections, you've been introduced to the basic cost-benefit analysis framework, as well as methodology for valuing non-market goods and incorporating risk into the decision-making process. Now it's time to take all of what we've learned together and talk about how governments can effectively regulate emerging technologies. It's important to recognize that it's not always feasible or desirable for the government to regulate new technologies. This is the case when individual actors can assess costs and benefits of new technologies for themselves. However, recalling our discussion of when markets work and when they don't, we recognize that individual incentives do not always align with what is best for society. This is especially true if the technology is associated with external costs or benefits, uninsurable risks, or substantial uncertainties. Thus, in many cases, the government has a role to play in approving and regulating new technologies. Regulation inevitably involves a trade-off in terms of the rights of different individuals or groups. Do people have the right to litter, to smoke, to listen to music? Or do those rights infringe on the rights of others to walk on clean streets, breathe clean air, or rest in quiet? These examples are fairly straightforward, as they don't involve the risk that typically comes with the adoption of a new technology. One approach to managing these trade-offs in the presence of risk is to enforce standards of liability and negligence. Standard of liability means that actors must compensate individuals harmed as a result of their actions. Many times, liability is combined with other safety regulations. Under negligence, on the other hand, the government determines the appropriate level of precaution, and actors are responsible only if they have not taken the required precautionary measures. To see how these standards might be enforced in practice, let's look at an example. Pause the video here and take a listen to this NPR story about an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Once you've finished listening, resume the video so we can discuss. In this case, oil companies are responsible for monitoring and compensating individuals for damages resulting from oil spills. However, environmental damages can be difficult or sometimes impossible to quantify, and the risk associated with drilling for oil in deep water is unclear. As is often the case with uninsurable risk, both companies and society rely on the government for guidance about how a technology should be implemented, or in this case, where drilling for oil should or shouldn't be allowed. Let's continue by further examining situations with uninsurable risk. Many environmental risks are uninsurable for one or more of the following reasons. There's a very small risk of very large damages. Damages occur over a very long time period, making it difficult to relate the damages back to the original cause. Damages are irreversible. Probabilities of damage are difficult to estimate or are unknowable. Damages are transboundary in nature, or, as is the case for many of our largest environmental problems, damages are global. In these cases, enforcing liability standards will not be sufficient to manage environmental risk. Despite our best efforts, many choices must be made in the face of uncertainty. For this reason, some scholars have suggested the use of the precautionary principle. The essence of the precautionary principle is simply better safe than sorry. According to the seminal work by David Kriegel et al., published in Environmental Health Perspectives in 2001, the precautionary principle has 4 central components. First, taking preventative action in the face of uncertainty. Second, shifting the burden of proof to the proponents of an activity. Third, exploring a wide range of alternatives to possibly harmful actions. And fourth, increasing public participation in decision-making. Much of this workshop has revolved around assessing risk and restricting the adoption of new technology. But it's important to understand that the development of new technology is one of the most powerful tools we have to improve both our standard of living and environmental quality. However, environmental benefits may be overlooked by private firms for some of the same reasons as environmental damages are overlooked. In this case, the government has a role to play in giving firms incentives to develop new technologies that will benefit both society and the environment. They can do so by subsidizing research and development, structuring pollution regulations to create an incentive for innovation, or adopting market-based policies. To conclude, the government plays an important role both in encouraging the development of new technology and also in regulating its adoption. Regulations inevitably involve trade-offs between the rights of different individuals and groups in society. Formulating effective regulations is not always straightforward, and it's important to think about the incentive structure created by any regulation we impose.